Today we're going to talk about another type of quadratic word problem that involves consecutive integers. If you've done these type of problems before, then consecutive means right after one another. So these are consecutive numbers are numbers right after each other. Integers are positive and negative whole numbers. So no decimals, no fractions. Consecutive integers mean numbers right after each other. For example, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Consecutive even would be things like 2, 4, 6, going on. And I could have negatives at this. I'd say negative 5, negative 4, negative 3 are consecutive. And I could say negative 4, negative 2, 0, 2, etc. are consecutive even. Consecutive odd would be 1, 3, 5, etc. So if I want to do consecutive integers starting with x, look back at this example here. Consecutive integers. If x is 1, how do I get from 1 to 2? I add 1. So my next number would be x plus 1. What if instead I wanted to go from 1 to 3? How do I go from 1 to 3? I do x plus 2. And if I had even more numbers I cared about, I could do x plus 3, x plus 4. And notice if I look at my example over here, negative 5. Say x is negative 5. If I add 1, I get to negative 4. If I add 2 to negative 5, I get negative 3. So this pattern holds no matter what my starting number is, x. Now let's look at the even and odd. Let's call even, I'm starting with x. So how do I go from x, or 2, how do I go from 2 to 4? What do I do to x? I add 2. Then how do I go from 2 to 6? I add 4. And if I had 4 numbers, then I do x plus 6 for my last set. Now what would you think would happen with odd integers? You would think it would be x, x plus 1, x plus 3, right? But let's do the same process and look at my actual list of numbers. I would have x. If I'm starting at x, so we'll start at 1. How do I go from 1 to 3? I still do x plus 2. And how do I go from 1 to 5? I still do x plus 4. So notice my answer ends up being the same for even and odd. It's just going to be the number I'm starting at is either even or odd. So it just depends what number I start with. All even numbers are 2 apart and all odd numbers are 2 apart. So that's why it's plus 2 plus 4. Okay, let's look at our steps for doing these integer problems. The first step is to identify the type of integer problem we're dealing with. Are we dealing with consecutive integers? Am I dealing with consecutive, and I'm going to abbreviate that, even integers? Or am I dealing with consecutive odd integers? Which of those am I looking at in my problem? Then I'm going to write an example of those integers. So if it's talking about 3 consecutive integers, I might choose 1, 2, and 3. Doesn't matter. I might just start with those. If it's a two consecutive even, I would do 6 and 8. Once again, you don't have to, you're just getting examples. Then we're going to call the first integer x, and then fill in how to represent the others in relation to x. So we'll write down, I'm going to do, let's say we're doing consecutive integers. My example would be, let's say 1, 2, 3. So then as I write it in terms of x, if 1 is x, then 2 would be x plus 1, and 3 would be x plus 2. So once again, that's if I just had consecutive integers. That's what I'm talking about writing down. Then, like we did last night, we're going to translate, whoops, don't know what happened there. We're going to translate, oh goodness, y'all, words into algebra. Translate words into algebra. Oh, I just found out. Okay, translate. There we go. Fun stuff. We're going to solve it, and usually this is going to be by factoring. So we're going to solve usually by factoring. Every once in a while, it's just going to end up being a regular old equation we're going to solve. Then we should end up with x equals a number. If x is your answer in step 5, what are the other numbers? And we're going to use step 3. So say I get, for example, you don't need to write this down, just pay attention. Say, for example, I get x equals 6, and we're still dealing with consecutive integers. Then that would mean x is 6, x plus 1 is 7, x plus 8 is, or x plus 2 is 8. So those would be my numbers, and then I need to actually answer the question. So it might ask, what is the sum of the larger two, which would be 7 plus 8 equals 15. Or it might say, what is the largest number? Or it might say, what is the smallest number? You have to read the question and actually answer it. Okay, so that's all well and good, but let's actually do a couple problems. Looking at my problem, it says the product of two consecutive integers. Stop. Two consecutive integers. So I'm dealing with a consecutive integer problem, and I'm talking about two of them. So write down two consecutive integers. So we're dealing with two. So I'm just going to pick easy ones, 1 and 2. Then I need to call my first integer x. So I call this x, which means 2 would be x plus 1. Now I go back to my problem, I reread it, and now I'm going to translate words to algebra. So when it says the product, that means I'm going to do something with multiplication, right? So I'm keeping that in my head. What am I multiplying? Two consecutive integers. What are my two consecutive integers? X and x plus 1. So I'm going to write x times x plus 1. Once again, we're multiplying because it says product. Then it says is, which we know is equals 56. And now I need to just go ahead and do what I can, solve by factoring. Multiply, x times x is x squared. X times 1 is 1x, or just x, equals 56. Is it set equal to 0? No, so I need to subtract that over and get x squared plus x minus 56 equals 0. Now I need to factor. Do I have a GCF? No. How many terms do I have? 3. So that means I need to use the x factor. So what multiplies to negative 56 and adds to 1? That would be 8 and 7, but the 7 is going to be negative. So I get x plus 8 times x minus 7 equals 0. Now I need to set each factor equal to 0. X plus 8 equals 0. x minus 7 equals 0. Solve them. I get x equals negative 8 and x equals 7. Stop. Once I've gotten to the x equals, I always reread my question. My question says, the product of two consecutive integers is 56. Does it say anything about being positive or negative? Nope. Does it say anything about being even or odd? Nope. So what that means is I'm going to have two sets of answers. The first set, I need to plug in negative 8 as my x. So if I had x is negative 8, then one more than that would be negative 7. So one of my sets of answers is negative 8, negative 7. But say I don't start with negative 8. What if I start with positive 7? That's x. So x plus 1 would be 8. So my second set of answers would be 7, 8. Both of these have a product of 56. And since there's nothing of them being even or odd or positive or negative, I have to put both of those as my answer. Let's do one that's just a little bit more complicated. The product of two consecutive even integers. Stop. I don't even read the rest of it. Two consecutive even integers. So think of two consecutive even integers. I'm going to do 2 and 4. So if I think of 2 and 4, then what I need to do is represent them. So x would be representing 2. So that means 4 would be represented by x plus 2. Because to get from 2 to 4, I add 2. And we're only thinking in terms of adding or subtracting. Okay. Now I go back and reread my question. The product of two consecutive even integers is, okay, that's where my equal sign is, so I'm going to stop and write one note. Product means I multiply. So x times x plus 2 means equals. Now I can read the rest part. So the part. 6 more than 3 times. Okay, 6 more than. This is why I was saying to put it at the end. Put it at the end, and now finish your sentence. 3 times their sum. Their sum. Do I know what their sum is right now? No. So let's find their sum. Sum means add. So that means x plus 2. If I combine like terms, that would give me 2x plus 2. So this is the sum of their numbers. So it's saying 3 times 2x plus 2. I need to put parentheses. 3 times their sum. 2x plus 2. And now I have a lot of simplifying to do. Deal with my parentheses first. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times 2 is 6, and I have this other 6 hanging out at the end. First, I'm going to combine like terms on the same side. There's nothing I can combine on the left side. But on the right, I can combine these two 6's together and give me 12. Now, I need to solve by factoring. Is everything on one side? Nope. So I need to move some stuff. So I'm going to subtract 6x. And it actually has something to combine with, so I need to make sure to combine those. So that would give me x squared minus 4x equals 12. If you can do all this in one step, that's fine. Then I need to subtract 12. And I get x squared minus 4x minus 12 equals 0. And then I have to factor. How does this factor? Well, it's going to be the x, what multiplies to negative 12, adds to negative 4. That's going to give me negative 6, positive 2. So x minus 6 times x plus 2 equals 0. And now I need to set my two factors equal to 0. And I'm going to clear most of this off so that I have some more space. Alright, so x minus 6 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0. So that means my two options are x equals positive 6, x equals negative 2. Reread your question. The product of two consecutive even integers. Are both of my answers even? Yes, so I can use them both. So that means when I look over here at x and x plus 2, I need to do starting with 6. Okay, so my first number would be 6, and if I add 2 to that, that would be 8. And then I need to start with negative 2. If I add negative 2 to that, I would get, so if I start with negative 2, add 2, I get 0. Okay, and my question is to find the integers. I've found the integers. These are my two options. And I have to have both of them because both of them will work for this problem. It didn't tell anything about negative or positive. All I know it's even, and both of my x's are even numbers. All right, come in ready to work tomorrow.